Hey everyone, welcome to the Breaking Point YouTube channel. If you're liking the videos, hit that subscribe button. Now let's get to the hunting action. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show this week. We are breaking something down that is a pretty interesting topic and something that a lot of hunters face issues with. We got our good friend Zach Haas here from Creek Bottom Land Management on. We're going to talk a lot about water holes today. Kind of a little bit of a reunion here too. Me and Zach actually went to school at University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. Both are in natural resources, and he actually did something with his degree, unlike myself, where I went kind of a different route. But we're just going to chat a little bit today, like I said, about water holes, EHD, cool new product they got out, and just kind of want to let him take the floor right off the bat and talk about his expertise in wildlife management and hunting industry, and a little bit of where he's at and what he does. So glad to have you on here, Zach.
Yeah, happy to be here. And yeah, it's one of those things, we never know how we're going to use our degrees, right? I even tried the whole hunting show thing, and that was a flop. But with that said, so obviously, as Mike said, I went to UW Stevens Point there and got a degree in biology and water resource management. And I used that to actually first become a research director, and then I became a senior aquatic biologist over time at a private pond and lake management company. So managing anything small little ponds, your wildlife ponds, up to 5,000, 10,000 acres lakes, whatever you want to say, but some of the biggest lakes in our state here in Wisconsin, but help build ponds, whether it be for fishing, recreation, swimming, but I manage ponds for campgrounds, municipalities, corporations, private, you name it. I was seeing good water, bad water, you name it. And so I had a pretty good career there and everything that way. But in the meantime, back in 2015, actually, my dad kind of went to me. He's like, Zach, you have a niche here, and you need to be bringing that. Because we're a big hunting family, obviously. And he's like, how about you kind of go down this road of land management, habitat improvement with your water expertise? All right. So I have coined that I am the industry water nerd, and I am proud to say that. Which some people might not want to call themselves a nerd, but I am a water nerd. With that said, so I started Creek Bottom Land Management in the goal of obviously improving whitetail properties and stuff that way to, hunt better deer, more mature deer, you name it. But with that niche of the actual, water side of it, because every year I go on probably anywhere from 40 to 50 properties a year doing consultations, and I would say at least 80, if not higher percentage of people don't have water. I mean, zilch. Or they'll go, well, I have a stream, I have a swamp. Well, that's not necessarily quality water. It's not necessarily what our deer want. So I kind of now, even kind of the whole EHD thing, obviously, to me, it all started back in 2012. So, poor college kid, right? Because I spent all my money in places I shouldn't have. And with that said, I took some of my money, my first paychecks, and I got a Missouri lease, 160 acres in northwest Iowa, or Missouri, in Nottoway County, actually. And got the lease, super excited, got cameras out and all this stuff. And at the time, I was just in Wisconsin, I was going for if I could shoot a 120, 130, I was happy. Whereas I'm going down there getting pictures of 140s, 160s, 170s, even one buck that was close to 200 we called Godzilla, because why not call a deer that, right? And
yeah.
And with that said, suddenly we got closer to season, and the bucks all fell off the radar, except for one buck. And so we had this one buck that was still probably 140s, but all the big deer were gone. And I'm thinking, what the hell happened? Talked to a landowner across the road, and he's like, I estimate about 80% of our mature deer are dead. I'm like, cool. Glad I got a lease down here. This is sweet. So I guess we're not hunting bucks. We're just hunting does. Neat. But with that said, so that's what started the mission of, all right, I'm a biologist, by trade and part of my passion. How do we fix the EHD issue? So over all my years of managing all these ponds and lakes across Wisconsin, being a big time hunter, and obviously now even doing the land management and consultation work, how can we fix it? And that's kind of where I'm at today. Is obviously and we'll get into it, but developing a product to help combat EHD and helping to improve properties overall, so we can have more water on our properties, proper placement. I mean, there's some crazy things with water I've been able to do for myself and for clients. Like one, I'll throw out there, and it's probably gonna blow some listeners' minds, is patterning a buck during the rut because of water. Done it, and it works like a charm. Bucks don't need to feed during the rut. We've seen it. They lose about 28% of their body weight because they don't eat. They still need a drink, and that's where you get patternable, obviously, hunts for your property.
Absolutely. Kind of going a little bit more into your water hole expertise. A lot of the ponds that you're creating, are they natural ponds? Are you putting in tanks? What kind of different things are you establishing on properties?
Yeah, so it varies. I prefer to have more of a natural setting, so more of a and I don't go very big, 20 to 25 foot diameter ponds, but either I'm usually putting in natural ponds if I can get seepage or groundwater. But now with that said, I still am doing tubs. Overall, I prefer obviously the natural ponds, line ponds, things that way. When it gets down to it, those to me can be some of the cleaner water sources, and you can design them to the layout of the property too. So like if there's a swale you have to line or something like that, or a tree you have to go around, you can kind of be a little more, customizable for it, because they can make a custom liner for it. So for instance, like when, we're doing these big ones, whether it be 43 acres, 20 acres, we're able to make a custom liner. Now, when we get that big, we actually have to weld them.
What's going on, everybody? Hope you're enjoying this week's content on the show. If you haven't already, check out our YouTube membership called the TBP Club. It allows you early access to all of our YouTube videos. It allows you access to our members only live Q&As, which is once a quarter. And it allows full access to our Rut Live grand prize giveaway. If you haven't already, check out the TBP Club.
So we had a little bit of technical difficulty here. I think we got the connection issue figured out, but we got Zach back on. He's going to be talking a little bit more about water hole liners, some of the things that he likes to use.
Yeah, so overall, we're kind of getting into, what I prefer, right? And so there's a lot of stuff on the market. There's the line ponds, there's the deer ponds, there's, you name it. I mean, kiddie pools, there's all kinds of stuff. And I really like natural ponds or line ponds. That's my preference. And there is a reason for that. It's because I do like to build an ecosystem. And that goes hand in hand with water quality. It's actually having a living, breathing system, as obviously as Mike. So it's one of those things that, all right, we can have a living, breathing system. Now we can have quality water. We can give these deer actually what they want. But also there's a big part of using even the deer tubs, the deer ponds, you name it. There's a reason to use it. And number one, when you have a creek or stream, it's cold water. It's spring-fed water. That shocks the internal system of a whitetail deer. So they're smarter than us. I mean, at the end of the day, we want ice cold beer. But for a deer, it's all about survival. So with that said, they want to get water sources that are closer to their internal body temperature. So that's when, they'll go into these line ponds, these deer tubs, and you name it. But the other part of it too is, when the water's sitting there, and it's also getting mineral enrichment. So like a stream a lot of times won't have that, whereas these ponds, especially when they get seepage or some runoff or rain runoff, whatever it might be, they're actually getting minerals from that surrounding soil embedded in them. So that's why I like natural ponds a lot, is they'll get that natural mineral source. So like, for instance, if you're on the western part of Wisconsin, it's a mineral enriched part of our state. That's also why, you can actually monitor mineral enrichment in the soils to directly correlates to antler size. Whereas if you don't have good mineral enrichment, you don't actually have as big a deer typically. So that gets in the water. And also when you have your streams, creeks, marshes, they're not necessarily good water. I mean, when I think about it, okay, so you have a stream and a farm field is just to the east, let's say. you get a big rain, what's going through that? All that fertilizer, all that runoff, and so you're having those issues. So when you can build a pond or put a water tub, deer pond, you can keep that pollution out as well. So to me, there's a big factor to that of keeping that water. Yeah, deer like dirty water, but people don't realize dirty doesn't mean just muddy.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, they still want quality of water, and so does every animal. They don't want to drink out of a cesspool. They want to drink out of quality water. So anyways, kind of off a tangent there, but yeah, like I said, I prefer in all my spots to usually use line ponds or natural ponds. But if you can't get the equipment, or if that's all you got, you just found a tub on your property and you're like, hey, this is what I have to work with. No, having water is better than no water on your property.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One thing I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned layering, using liners for ponds. I have a bunch of friends that will build ponds in their property, and they use bentonite a lot
Yep.
for creating a lining. Do you have much experience with that, or what's your take on using that?
Bentonite, it fails more than it works. Put it that way. And actually, ironically, clay liners, and this is directly from even excavators I used to work with, only have a 10-year lifespan. So, and if they ever dry out, and this is the problem I have with clay. I mean, it's a simple way as long as you work it in, you rototill it in, you really work it into the soils. But let's say that pond dries up, we have a drought, and it cracks. It won't reseal itself, and now you'll never have that pond again. So it's definitely an option. It's just not what I would say is my first option, because typically you already dug the pond and everything that way. To me, I'd probably just end up spending the little extra money to get a pond liner versus doing the bentonite clay. Or you can luck out and sometimes and actually dig and hit clay. Well, then you can obviously pack it and things that way. But clay does have its pros and cons. But like even when I did bigger ponds, I would say 50% of our liner business was actually relining clay lined ponds with synthetic liner.
Okay. What's like the lifespan out of a synthetic liner?
So the synthetic, the synthetic liner itself actually has a 20-year warranty on it, at least from the company I used to work with. And as long as it's covered and nothing punctures it, right, it'll last way longer than you and I are going to be on this planet. So but the biggest thing is there is a little more protection that goes in place. So for instance, like if you have shale ground, rocky ground, you're going to need fabric underneath, like a geotextile fabric, and that'll cushion that liner, make sure there's no rocks or roots coming through it. But on the other side of it, you also want to cover the top liner with that fabric to hold your material in place, whether it be sand, silts, dirt. And as long as it's protected that way, that thing's going to last a long time. Now, I know a lot of guys I've talked to too, they'll use like the old billboard material. Problem with that stuff, it's not woven material, so over time UV breaks it down and it'll tear, so you don't get much life out of those ones either.
Okay. Something I wanted to kind of go into with you also is just about like your overall strategy in placing certain locations on the property. Now, like I'm sure every property's different, but are you typically trying to put a water hole at all stand locations or just specific ones? Like I know some instances less can be more on a given property. So I just kind of wanted to like pick your brain a little bit about like for our viewers, just maybe how they can implement water tanks or any sort of ponds on their property strategically for hunting aspects.
Yeah, so first, usually I recommend per 40 to have usually a minimum of 2 water sources. And really for me, I mean, I wouldn't say that all of my food plots have water, because obviously it gets to a point where it's hard to pattern a buck, and that makes it difficult.
Yeah.
But what I do, and I know like Tony LaPratt talks about it, and it's one of the fundamentals I do appreciate of his is compartmentalizing your property. And so like I'll even tell clients like I want to quadrant your land off. So like let's say if you have a 40, right? I'll make that I have 4 10-acre quadrants. I want a water source in each one of those quadrants. And from there, and the reason being is because of whitetail's range, right? So that northwest 10 acres, might be the very southeastern corner of a mature buck's range. And vice versa, that southeast quadrant might be the northwest part of another buck's range. So I want to make sure that if a buck is just sneaking on your land, that there's that source present. So that's why I do quadrants on my property with water. Now, there are some instances, like I have one on my own property, for instance, where it's probably about a 2.5 acre, 3 acre area. I have 2 ponds in that location, but they're for different wind sets. So I hunt one on the north wind set, one on the south wind set. So there is that as well to play into it. But now the biggest things I will say for everyone watching and listening, it's transitional areas. That's what I focus on. The food plot side's great, right? But I want a water hole that's in between 2 bedding zones. Because as we know, deer are moving all day in their bedding zones. So if you could put a water source nearby bedding, and when that buck's checking for does during the seeking phase, or early in the year, maybe he's bedded up tight, while he's growing velvet, whatever it might be, I want water close to bedding. And whether it be a bedding to food transition, a bedding to bedding transition, or even a food to food transition, I like the water in between that point just to get them moving through my property. So yeah, there's some properties where I'll have like a food plot that has a pond in it. And how I usually design, I guess, my food plots even is I call it kind of a multi-plant. Like I'll have my big annual, right? Whether it be an acre field, 2 acre field, whatever it might be. But I'll do a subset 1/8 to 1/4 acre food plot that has the water hole in it. And that's gonna be a whole different variety. Usually it's like a high protein perennial blend, and something that I know the deer are gonna be attracted to. I mean, just like my kids are attracted to ice cream every day, I want that treat on my property for my deer.
Okay. Do you ever run into properties that you don't recommend water?
Super wet properties in the first place.
Yeah.
And like obviously here in Wisconsin, it's a little different. We have a lot of wetland rules here. Like, do you have obviously a bunch of wetland on your property? It's all mapped wetland. You can't even touch it anyways. You can't be digging into the wetland. But with that said, I mean, to me, other than actually if I went to a property managing for, like, let's say ducks or something that way, I mean, I'm usually always recommending water in some shape or form. To me, it's just so powerful. Like I think back, like, so for instance, like I hunt a property that has a 20 acre cattail marsh. It has a 1 acre pond near it. My neighbors have a 1/2 acre pond. I still have 6 ponds on that property. And honestly, it's one of those things that I hunt those ponds more than I hunt my food plots, and especially early season. And to me, it's way more powerful tool to actually, like I said, pattern bucks during the rut. I mean, they're going to drink. They're going to come to it. I've seen bucks, and you probably have too, Mike, where they jump in it just to cool off. I mean, it's wild.
My family has land just west of Stevens Point, and we have
Yep.
a pretty good sized natural oil pond that we dug on the property. There's a treatment facility like right on the other end of the property, so they have a couple decent areas for them to drink out of. But it is a very wet property, so I've just never had. I've tried putting a couple tanks in, and it's just never been very successful. So I just kind of wanted your input on that. But now, like, since being down in Iowa, it just seems like a lot of these properties I hunt here, water is a little bit more limited. So I have had a lot more success with the last couple years starting to put in water tanks, or hunting over pond dams, putting cams on pond dams, things like that. I know Brennan, the farm that he hunts down south, he has water tanks. I want to say 4 or 5 on that parcel now, and it is just absolutely ridiculous. The amount of pictures and good bucks he has hitting those all year round, but especially during October, November time frame.
Oh, yeah.
One thing that he's started to actually implement on a couple of his tanks is he puts solar panels on them, trying to keep them heated during the winter months. I don't know if you've ever messed around with anything like that before, but
I have done it a little bit.